But if it were not for advocates and chefs like Doug choosing to go back to farms, having direct relationships with the people they're buying their food from, and creating the kind of food system we want, our food movement would not be where it is today. We would not have the victories that we have. So I'm really pleased to introduce to you now Doug McNish, author of Veganati, Eat Raw, Eat Well, Raw, Quick, Delicious, and Vegan Every Day. Because as I've been running around the lot telling everybody, dropping meat from the diet does not have to make your meals suck. There's so much deliciousness that can come from the plant kingdom. I'm really glad that you're taking the time, committing to yourselves by being here, and upping your skills a little bit. We're going to spend 40 to 45 minutes together watching Doug work his magic. But don't fret. Everything that he's doing here is within your grasp. So whether you're a long-standing home cook or this is something new to you, I'm sure there's something to be had. And do not hesitate to put up your hand and ask Doug a question. He's a really good teacher. So hands together and really thanking Doug from Public Restaurants for being here today. Thanks, Doug.
How are you all doing? I'm usually mic'd. Can everyone hear me? If you can't hear me, yell at me and I'll speak louder. So my name is Doug McNish. Everything I do, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, if you guys want to follow along, we post lots of awesome pictures. For anyone on their iPhones right now addicted to Instagram like I am, it's at Doug McNish, same with Twitter. My physical space is at 561 Marley Avenue. It's called Public Kitchen. It's not a traditional restaurant in a sense that all I do is you come in and get a meal and that's it. It's education, it's teaching, we have food items to go. We're at the Evergreen Brickworks Farmers Market every Saturday. We do events like this. We're at Veg Food Fest a couple weekends ago for any of you that were there. And I have a few cookbooks. So my first cookbook actually came out in 2012. And a year later, was very blessed to win the award of Best Vegan Cookbook in the World. So it's Eat Raw, Eat Well. It's 400 raw, vegan, gluten-free recipes. So for those of you guys not familiar with raw food, it is a little different in a sense that nothing's cooked. But there's still cool things like panzerotti and tacos and pizza and pad thai and basically anything you can think of that would be a traditional meal you can turn into doing raw. So one of the things that came up with this book while I was touring and promoting it all everywhere was, you know, it's awesome, but I don't necessarily want to spend 3 days making one recipe. For any of you guys familiar with raw food, you know, there's soaking, there's sprouting, there's dehydrating. Not necessarily in all of it, but in some of it. The raw panzerotti in here is phenomenal. It takes 3 days to make. So some people hate me for that. But if you have a little extra time and you want to eat into raw, it's worth every minute of those 3 days. The finished product is phenomenal. It's delicious. So my publisher, of course, it's done very well. I should say it's sold over 20,000 copies all over the world 4 years later, and it's still doing very well. And then my publisher wanted to do a second follow-up book. And so Raw, Quick, and Delicious came out a year later, and it's 5 ingredients or less, 15 minutes or less to the table. As far as I know, in terms of raw food cookbooks, it's one of the first of its kind. There's no soaking, there's no sprouting, there's no 3-day-long panzerottis, there's no banana leaves or anything crazy. It's very simple, whole food, plant-based ingredients. So that's Raw, Quick, and Delicious. And then my publisher wanted a third book, and I wanted a third book as well, because why not? I'm actually classically trained in French cuisine. Traditionally, before I became vegan. And so this is my sort of opus of 500 vegan, whole food, plant-based ingredients. There's nothing processed. There's basically no crap whatsoever in my book. And actually in June of this year, it won the same award. It won Best Vegan Cookbook in the World. So it's done very well. Thank you. No need to clap. I do have them for sale today if anyone would like. You know, I do have an 11-month-old baby to diaper. So 500 vegan gluten-free recipes. I actually really do. And then this is kind of cool because my book was just translated into Italian. So I don't have copies for sale, but if anyone is in Italy or has family there that wants to get into this way of eating or living, it was just translated into Italian. I don't speak Italian, but I think it's really cool. So if anyone is interested. And then I self-published some kids coloring books. For any of you guys that are into coloring books, are really hot right now. So there's 4. There's one based on veggies, one based on fruit, one based on local, and one based on superfoods. So they're kids coloring books. There's lots of cool tips and tricks in here. And then there's recipes at the end that little kids can follow as well. Okay? So I'm a vegan chef with a fierce commitment to health and organics. What does that mean? Classically trained chef. I'm 33 now. I started cooking at the age of 15. Around 21, I had a bit of an epiphany, and I said, I'm going to become a vegetarian. I had no idea what that meant at the time. I think it meant you ate grass, or, I didn't know what was going to happen. And I fell in love, with really creating organic vegan cuisine. So everything I do, I believe I'm one of the few chefs in Toronto that you will find that sources nearly every single ingredient, either certified organic or wild crafted. It's very important to me, and in my opinion, it really reflects, not only in the ethics of eating, but also in the final flavor, presentation, texture, etc. of the food. So my food cost is higher than any chef you'll ever meet, and it's partly why I'm self-employed too, because no owner wanted to take on my food cost. So it happened by proxy. So that's a little bit about me. Here today, I don't have a ton of time, so I just wanted to show you guys one simple recipe. The holidays are coming up, and one of the things I love gravy. So we're doing a really awesome polenta poutine here today, for those of you guys that have had it already. I have fine dining training. I've worked for some amazing chefs. I've done so much in my career already, and everyone knows me for polenta poutine. And it's delicious, don't get me wrong, but I can do fancy French reductions too. So let's get started. So it's a mushroom miso gravy. So in a lot of vegetarian cuisine, in my opinion, what's missing is that depth of flavor. And we call that the 5th sense. It's called umami. And that umami is like, I know it's a bad analogy, but when you have a steak or ribs or a burger and it's dripping blood and it's like, oh, this is really, I want more. That's that umami. That's that extra sense. There's sweet, sour, salty, spicy, and umami. And in my opinion, so much of that is missing in vegetarian cuisine. So there's various ingredients and ways you can still create that depth of flavor. And that's something that my staff and I are consistently working on, whether it's a tomato sauce or a cannelloni or a gravy or rice or quinoa. It doesn't matter. I want you, the customer, to be hooked on my food. I have to pay the bills, but part of doing that is creating that depth of flavor and saying, oh God, I want more. It's that addictive quality. You go out for a meal sometimes and it's like, oh, it was okay. They don't have that depth of flavor. So we're gonna get started. You have the root end and you have the other end here. So we're just gonna take a little bit off both sides and we're gonna cut it right through the middle. Okay, so we've cut it in half. We're gonna take a little bit off the top, a little bit off the bottom. Just peel off this top layer. And you're actually going to remove the root end, the piece that holds it together, and you just go in on a little angle and just remove that. Okay, that's all you do. And then you lay it this way. So many people, including cooks, they cut an onion this way. So you actually want to go north to south, not east to west. East to west, you're going to have big, ugly half moons of onions, and they're not going to be uniform in size. They're not going to cook evenly. So you're going to go this way. I'll go slow at first. Just like that. Always curving the fingers in, no dicing, no cutting off fingertips, right? Just like that. And that's how you make nice, uniform julienne pieces. So I can go a bit faster. I'm going to show off. I don't have to look. Everyone always likes that. So that's a nice julienne, properly julienne onion, and that's what cooks nice and evenly. So I'm just going to get that into one of my bowls here. So one of the next stars of this recipe are mushrooms. And you could do whatever mushrooms you want. I just have button here. And I like to leave them in nice big pieces. Mushrooms are about 90% water. So when you cook them down, if you cut them small to begin with, the final product will be really, really small. And they're going to disappear in the gravy. I don't want them to disappear. Who's had the poutine already today? Nice chunks of mushroom, right? Again, texture. That's really important. And you could use whatever mushroom you want, guys. Cremini, portobello, shiitake, oyster. You can get fancy. You can do a lobster mushroom gravy. Any of you guys ever seen lobster mushrooms before? They're actually starting to be in season right now. So if you go to one of your farmers markets, Forbes Wild Foods actually has them in season right now. They're organic and awesome. And I'm vegan. I don't eat lobster or seafood. And lobster mushrooms are awesome. They actually taste fairly close to lobster. I'm just going to pop them into a bowl. So I'm going to get my pan hot. You're going to ignore this little rim of gravy that's on top. We use this to heat the gravy this morning. So ignore that. So I'm getting it nice and hot. You don't want to add your oil into the pan at the beginning either. You always wait for the pan to get hot and then add the oil. Reason is every oil has a smoke point. So it's a point at which the oil starts to degrade and break down. The bonds that hold it together break apart like elastic bands and it can catch on fire. So if you add oil now and then you go on Instagram and you watch Doug McNish's pictures and you're in awe, the pan can catch on fire. So let it get hot. Then once it's hot, add your oil when you're ready to start cooking. So it's an open flame, so it's getting nice and hot. So it's one of the questions I get asked almost all the time as a chef, what oil do I cook with? So I like a grapeseed oil or grapeseed or sunflower. Olive oil has a very low smoke point, so for some people it's like an epiphany to learn you don't want to cook with olive oil. Have very low smoke point, it starts to break down, become rancid in your body, not something you want to cook with. A lot of people like cooking with coconut oil. It's like a mid-range oil, doesn't have a huge high smoke point, so it can start to break down as well. So for high heat cooking like what we're doing here, you actually wouldn't want to use coconut oil. Same with avocado oil, it's a mid-range smoke point too. Some of the highest ones are grapeseed, sunflower, canola, which I don't use because it's highly inflammatory, and peanut oil. Peanut oil was a big one back in the 80s into the early 90s. It's really cheap and it has a high smoke point. So I'm gonna get my onions in the pot here. And then you want to hear that. You never want to put food into a cold pan. It starts to absorb oil. It's not good. So we're gonna let those start to brown off just a little bit. We have some beautiful fresh thyme here. Love cooking with fresh thyme, and we have some garlic. So I'm just gonna take my garlic and give it a smash with the back of my knife. Just a little bit. There's no need to go crazy. Some people take the garlic and not necessary. We're just going to start to chop it a little bit, break it down. So you're not tasting this, so I'm going to pretend because I don't have sea salt with me. But my little tip is to take a little bit of sea salt. You put it on the garlic. It helps act as an abrasive and it helps hold it together. What you want to do is mince the garlic. There's a difference between minced and chopped. So we bring it to this point. We're going to take the blade and actually draw it through the garlic. Woo! Okay, then you run the knife through again. So this is the type of garlic that disappears in your food. Okay? I don't know if you've ever been to a restaurant and let's say you've had a guacamole and there's huge pieces of garlic in the food and you're tasting it for a week after. They haven't taken the time to properly mince it. Okay? This is the type of garlic, again, it's going to disappear. You're going to taste the garlic, but you're not going to have pieces. You're going to know it's there, but you're not going to, garlic, garlic, garlic. So we have our onions cooking down. The natural sugars are starting to come out. They're starting to brown a little bit. So I'm going to get my mushrooms into the pot. Okay. We're just going to move our garlic off to the side. Another little chef tip is to work with a nice big cutting board so you can do things like this. You can get those dinky little cutting boards that are this big. Don't do that. Invest in a nice bamboo cutting board. I actually like to use ones that are bigger, but I knew the table space here is a bit smaller. But the bigger the cutting board for me, the better. So I'm just going to give this a stir. And what you want to do is to start to brown the mushrooms off as well. This technique or this method is called caramelization. Almost all vegetables, onions, parsnips, potatoes, have natural sugars in them. You want to apply heat and start to brown them off a little bit, and that's going to help create some of that depth of flavor as well. Again, it's a step that's missing in a lot of vegetarian food. Any recipe you ever see online, mark my words here, where it says put everything in a pot, cover with water and boil, for soup I should say, Boo. Take your time at the beginning. Saute the mirepoix down, or the onions. Mirepoix, sorry, is carrot, celery, onion. It's a classic start to almost any super stew. Take the time and brown that off, or cook it a little bit at the beginning. And that starts to draw out those natural sugars, those natural flavors, and that's what you want. If I was just to put these onions and mushrooms together in the pot with water, there's no flavor there. You're going to taste a little bit of onion and mushroom, but no brown. And this doesn't have to go for super long. So we have here some beautiful thyme. I love working with thyme. Thyme and mushrooms go hand in hand. Beautiful ingredient here. So when you're working with fresh thyme, all you're going to do is take the stem like that and just pull the leaves back. Okay? When you're at the top of the stem, you can actually go the other way. Meaning, so here's the stem of thyme. Sorry, the twig of thyme. You're just going to pull back. When you get to the top, it's like asparagus. You know how you break asparagus off naturally? Just do the same thing with the thyme. And the soft part at the top will come off naturally. Most fresh herbs, you don't necessarily want to get in at the beginning of the recipe. Their flavor will dissipate. More than not, and of course there's exceptions to every rule, you want to add them towards the end. The natural oils release and you get that pungent flavor throughout, okay? So I'm not going to add them quite yet. And of course there's always exceptions. The other thing is you don't want to chop the heck out of fresh herbs. They'll start to oxidize. They'll start to go brown. So I'm just going to give it a really rough cut. I'm going to push this off to the side as well. So I have this cooking down nicely. And yes, I can do this. This type of garlic will burn very fast. So you want this in here for a minute max, minute and a half max. So we're going to get it in. And you just want it to be aromatic. That's it. You don't need to let it cook for a long time. And I know you guys can't smell it up here, but it's rich and delicious and mushroomy. It's perfect for this time of year. So that's all I'm going to do with the garlic. I'm going to just let it cook that long. Really not long at all, especially when it's minced. Who is here for the wine tasting? So you guys feel good right now? I love Southbrook. I love Paul. I love everything they stand for. In my restaurant, that's all we cook with. Again, I'm one of the only crazy chefs in Toronto that uses organic wine to cook with. Most restaurants use this wine. It's called cooking wine, and it's about 90% salt. Ugh. So we use this in everything. So I'm going to deglaze here. So deglaze is just a chefy term for adding a liquid to pick up the brown bits off the bottom of the pan. The other thing it does, again, is add, what's the word? Umami. That's that depth of flavor. Alcohol does that very well for dishes. So that's the Organic Connect from Southbrook, and we don't want to add a lot. The other rule when you're cooking with alcohol is to cook the alcohol flavor out. So at this point, you need to let it come up to a boil and cook off the alcohol. If you don't, the final product, and this goes, there's really no exception for this rule, you're going to have a raw alcohol flavor in your food. It's bad. It does not taste good. It's what's the word? Almost aseptic or too tannic. It's almost bitter in a way. So you need to let the alcohol cook out. It doesn't take long, okay? And that'll happen within the first couple of minutes. The base for my gravy is really simple. So we have some water here, and we have something called wheat-free tamari, or tamari. So everything, long time ago, was tamari. Sorry, I should say all soy sauce was tamari. The item soy sauce didn't really exist. Like most things, large companies got a hold of it and wanted to make more money from it, so they started adding water and preservatives and alcohol and wheat and all these things that made it last longer on the shelf, and we're left with the product today that most people know as soy sauce. Soy sauce, in my opinion, is a dirty, salty, it's not a good flavor. Most of it is added, there's caramel color and different things in there. Tamari is the pure version. So still high in sodium, not something to drink. I look at this as almost like my veal stock. In traditional cooking, you know, you make veal stock or you make beef stock and cook it down. So I look at this as almost like my reduced beef stock or my veal stock in my cuisine. So this has come to a boil. For purposes of now, the alcohol has cooked off enough. I'm going to add a bit of water in here.
What's tamari made from?
Soybeans. It is made from soybeans, yes. You can find low sodium, organic, and conventional versions, but of course we want organic. I'm gonna add my tamari. Like anything that's whole food based it's more expensive than soy sauce. You don't need as much. Okay, I use a product in my business like vanilla bean powder instead of vanilla extract. It's expensive. Like, you know, you're gonna pay $80 for a little bag, but it lasts a whole year and you need 1/8 of a teaspoon per serving. So it's not like extract where you need a whole teaspoon or a half a teaspoon. You use less. So again, it's like paying more up front and it lasts a longer time. Tamari's like that as well. So this is gonna come up to a boil here. So we have organic cornstarch. So we're gonna get a little bit of that into a bowl. So we're gonna make something called a slurry. So we're gonna put cold water, always cold water with cornstarch, and you don't need a lot, and we're just gonna whisk that up. So we're gonna let that sit. And then the other item here is miso. Is anyone not familiar with miso? So this is brown rice miso, so it's gluten-free. If that's something that is of concern to you, you can find some miso does contain gluten. Generally speaking, it's barley. So we're gonna get that into a bowl. Oops. And we're just gonna add a tiny bit of water to that. And we're just gonna thin that out. Now, I like to use unpasteurized miso. It's still living, it has a living bacteria in it. You can find pasteurized miso. Unpasteurized miso, of course, is more expensive. It doesn't last as long. It's much better for you. It has a better depth of flavor as well. The reason I'm telling you this is you never want to boil it. Once you boil unpasteurized living miso, you're killing the bacteria. You still have the flavor, but you're going to destroy all those beautiful bacteria that are good for your gut. The most simple miso soup that my wife and I love on busy days where we just want a hot bowl of soup for dinner, bring some water to a boil, turn it off, whisk in some of that miso, you have instant miso soup. A little bit of sesame oil, green onion, tofu, noodles, whatever you want, but that's the most simple way to do it, okay? So this has come up to a boil, my slurry. I'm gonna get that in here. And you're gonna see right away, you guys can see this in here? You're gonna see right away that it's gonna start to thicken it. So something to remember when you're working with cornstarch, slurry to thicken is it will come to its maximum thickening state when it's come to a boil. Cornstarch doesn't have the strongest holding capability, for lack of a better word. Flour, for example, will make a roux. Flour will hold something for a year. Cornstarch will only last for a day, okay? Or 2 days max. So it's not, as it sits, let's say you make a gravy on a Monday, by a Thursday you're gonna start to see that it's gonna start to become thinner. You can always add more slurry, like make another quick slurry and add it when you're reheating it. So I'm gonna turn this down. The other thing to remember about a cornstarch slurry is you don't want to boil it vigorously for too long because it will start to break apart. I'm actually gonna turn it off. I'm gonna add my thyme. And then I'm going to add my miso right at the end. And again, that miso is just for depth of flavor and adding that extra layer that's like, ah, this is really good and tasty. That's it. That's my mushroom miso gravy. No clapping yet, young lady. So my business, my physical storefront is called Public Kitchen. We're at 561 Marley Avenue. We're at the corner of Marley and Glencairn. And for those of you saying, where the heck is that? I've never heard of it before. I hadn't heard of it either. We're up by Yorkdale Mall, Glencairn subway stop right off the subway line. We're at the Evergreen Brickworks Farmers Market every single Saturday except for Christmas and 1 week in July. The Brickworks is open year-round. We always have at least 3 meals you can come and sit down and eat. We do fresh smoothies, cold juices. I have 3 cookbooks plus kids coloring books. We teach cooking classes at Public Kitchen, so those will happen this winter. We're going to start to do Thursday night dinners. In 2 weeks, I'm getting a liquor license. I've been spending the last 2 months sourcing out all my beer, all my wine, all my spirits. Everything that goes into every drink will be organic. I want to thank you all for listening to me for this last little while. we're going to distribute my recipe for everyone, and you're all going to come taste the gravy over at my booth. We're down at the end. We have polenta poutine, black bean sliders, raw tostada. Thank you very much. Have a good day.